Let's check out dinosaur warfare first, right?
For ancient warfare, humans have utilized beasts of war for millennia and in a variety of capacities. We all know about the usage of war elephants, like the famous example of Hannibal Barca in his war against the Roman Empire. Horses defined cavalry charges for thousands of years and were used in combat as recently as World War II. Carrier pigeons flew hundreds of miles to deliver important.
Also, guys, like, can't we just say how big of a missed opportunity is for Ark and other games that require you to like ride on the backs of other dinosaurs? Like, can we just talk about how big of a missed opportunity it is that we don't actually show like hand-to-hand combat on the backs of dinosaurs? Like, that's one of the things that I always was annoyed by, right? For example, like in Durango Wildlands, for some stupid reason, when you're trying to fight something on the back of a dinosaur, you always jump down from the dinosaur's back, which just baffles me. Hopefully the new Durango Wildlands game doesn't do that. But Ark, half the dinosaurs, you can't actually use fire weapons from their back. And even if they do, the camera is done in a really wonky way that, like, it becomes really inconvenient for people to shoot off from the backs of dinosaurs, which is kind of crazy considering how Mongolians were able to, like, shoot off, like, stuff from the horses. Like, we want juicing from dinosaurs. Heck, I mean, look, even, like, Ark added in the lance as well, which you can use on a horse, but, like, it's even wonkier if you do it on a horse. But the stuff that on the dinosaur's back, like, you can't use a lance in the Rex, which is absurd, but yeah. Shooting on dinosaurs is just such an underrated theme.
This video will explore how various human cultures throughout history would potentially utilize dinosaurs in warfare, divided into 4 categories: messengers, mounts, packs, and artillery. Most of these animals could function perfectly well in multiple categories. Historical footage of these interactions is sadly lacking, so we'll be turning to Warhammer Fantasy for some visual demonstrations of these.
Oh, let's go, Warhammer!
First off, thank you to everyone who contributed to the community post while I was working on the script. You all helped to refine my ideas and brought valuable points, many of which I'll include in the video. Second off, this is very obviously a speculative video, and while I'm going to be keeping things fairly realistic in terms of how different dinosaurs could be used, we'll need to allow for the rule of cool as well. Is it practical to have 10-ton carnivores accompany your infantry block? Probably not. Is it freaking awesome? Yeah. So bear in mind that we're using a blend of logistics and military fantasy to make the concept of this video work. It's heavily inspired by my book series Extinction.
That is true. Like, if you think about it, right, a large carnivorous dinosaur like the T-Rex, like, that guy would eat so much meat, right? There's also this, if you think about it, right? Because, we don't actually know how much a dinosaur required to sustain itself. Like, we don't know how much sustenance a dinosaur needed. Because we don't actually know whether the dinosaurs were, like, warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Or were they, like, a new blood type, like, what was it, like, half warm, half cold-blooded, like some people suggested. I've actually heard that that's actually, like, out of fashion now, but, whatever. I don't know about the science, to be honest, but I've seen some people say that that's no longer the case. Yes, because we don't know how, like, if, for example, if we would take a sauropod to warfare, right? Like, how would you, like, provide food? Because sauropods, if they were like elephants, they usually eat all day, right? So, how much food would a dinosaur need? I mean, like crocodiles, for example, right? If a crocodile eats something, then it spends days not eating anything. We don't know if that was the case with dinosaurs. And I'm pretty sure the only reason crocodiles don't have to eat for days is because they don't spend that much energy. We're talking about an animal that is used in warfare. So, like, I'm assuming even if it doesn't move around all day and fighting other people, at least I'm assuming if it's like in the medieval background, it would probably require like humans riding on the dinosaur. At least if you think about Warhammer, like what that guy pointed out, right? In Warhammer, half the time is you spending time just traversing the map. That's a lot of energy. And I don't know. Sure, you might have to be able to, the people might be able to gather our meat from the guys that we killed during the fight, but how are you gonna carry all this meat? If you think about it, right? Most humans as well, like humans, I hate to admit, but most of the humans are just skin and bones compared to like a pig or a cow. And I guess if that's the sense, you would probably have to take cows or pigs that are more like weight to meat efficient compared to other animals, like humans, I suppose. Because most of the times, humans would either use humans, right? Or maybe not! Because if you think about it in a case-by-case scenario, where people do carry around dinosaurs as like a world, as war mounts, kind of like Wormworld, yeah. I guess you could use them as food too. But, like, then you also gotta think about how you're gonna move the corpses, right? In RimWorld, a guy can just lift up a Brachiosaurus corpse like it's nothing, but I'm assuming in the IRL that's probably not the case.
Military fantasy, where civilizations from Earth's history coexist with and fight alongside intelligent prehistoric creatures. You'll likely see many of the concepts discussed here pop up in the books. Oh, and here's
that's also true. The intelligence is gonna be another issue. Like, because we can train pigeons and birds, right? But one of the reasons I think people can use horses very well is because horses are smarter.
Sneak peek at the work-in-progress cover art by the awesome Hetoresco, who's doing the covers and concept art for the first Extinction trilogy. This part of the series follows an Aztec warrior and his Utahraptor as they defend ancient Mexico against a Carthaginian invasion. I just finished the third draft of Obsidian Dawn, so pre-orders should be available before the end of the summer. Let's start things off with messengers. Information delivery is a crucial part of any military campaign. Without communication, there is no war. Modern humans used carrier pigeons in the 20th century, taking advantage of their homing signals to send them back and forth between their nests with messages attached to them. It's certainly possible that Mesozoic dinosaurs had similar instincts, but given the
Microraptor
record, it's nothing more than speculation. Let's follow that train of thought for a second, though. I can imagine Abelisaurids in South America using their long legs and advanced respiratory systems to follow messaging trails they're trained to memorize. Carrying the
Carnivores as a messenger? I don't know! Because, like, Carnivores aren't even built to travel long distances, right? And the reason humans actually use pigeons for homing things is not because they are animals that are smart, but because they're animals that can memorize where the homes are. That's why they're called homing pigeons. Carnivores, I don't think, is a migratory animal. If I had to pick like a migratory animal, I think it might be, if I had to pick like an animal that is not a flyer, I would actually go for, what was it? Those green things in Walking with Dinosaurs. Parksosaurs. Yes, Parksosaurs. But assuming the way the movie implied that they were also migratory following Edmontosauruses and Pachyrhinosaurus, right? I'm assuming they would be a small migratory animal. Like, if you consider this a migratory animal. It might not be. But if it is, I would consider using this guy. Because I don't think Carnivores is built for speed, nor is it built for traveling long distances. Like, I don't know, Carnivores?
knotted cords called quipu so favored by the Inca, which didn't have a written language. These cords carried information based on the placement and number of knots, and assuming your Carnivores was well trained, would eliminate the need for a human rider. Spinosaurus in Egypt could perform a similar function. The ancient Egyptian
That is an interesting use, using the things on his arms.
Of knots, and assuming your Carnivores was well trained.
So did older people not have like a written language?
For a human rider. Spinosaurus in Egypt could perform a similar function.
Oh my god, Primal Carnage mentioned, holy shit, okay.
Used various fats and waxes to waterproof surfaces, and so could create sealed wooden containers with papyrus messages inside. Again, assuming trainability, they could attach these capsules to a Spinosaurus and send it along a predetermined path in a river system, where it would be more difficult for enemies to intercept the message. The Spinosaurus' large size and formidable jaws and claws would more often than not carry it through to its destination, where it could be given another message and sent back. Some of you mentioned that Spinosaurus might take on a pharaonic motif, and I agree. In Extinction, Spinosaurus is heavily associated with Sobek and is seen as a symbol of divine royalty. The men and women who care for these carnivorous river gods are considered holy, and are also important from a practical sense, given their role in communication across the massive desert kingdom. Arboreal
But, okay, there's also this. Spinosaurus as a messenger? I mean, it makes sense from a coolness perspective, right? Spinosaurs were primarily aquatic, so if you wanted to squash in a Spinosaurus somehow, I would assume they'd be, like, more, like, mobile, like, scouting, water boats, I guess, in their role. But I'm gonna be honest, right? I don't think large animals would be efficient to be, to be a messenger. Because there are large animals. Like, if you think about, like, war stuff, usually you would probably send something out that can, like, avoid the enemy's line of sight. Like, if other people can use large dinosaurs to send messengers to one another, you would assume that, like, they have access to dinosaurs as well, right? And like, if a Spinosaurus, sure, Spinosaurus can't be, is more or less susceptible to being attacked by other wildlife because it's the apex predator. I'm pretty sure other people would be able to see that it's carrying a message. And they would probably be able to, like, get the Spinosaurus. Like, they would be able to intercept it more easier. If I would be considering, like, a river-like animal, I guess I would probably go for something like Campsosaurus. Like a small crocodilian or something like that. Or, again, a flyer. I don't know why they are refusing to use flyers. Like, why not like a Rhamphorhynchus or Sortes?
River system, where it would be more difficult for enemies to intercept the message. The Spinosaurus' large size and formidable jaws...
I would probably use Spinosaurus more like a fishing mode. Like, maybe connect something on the side, like a platform, so that people can, like, fish off of its back. or maybe use that as like a moving like a platform things. Maybe they can use a sail, maybe like a battle boat, kind of like with a shield. So we don't know how well Spinosaurus turn, right? But if I would design Spinosaurus as a war animal, I'd probably like connect something to its side, and so that like we'd have like snipers from the behind, like in active warfare is what I'm saying, right? The Spinosaurus would be able to like swim up quickly from the riverside, and they would be able to snipe the enemies off their boats. And when the enemies are trying to snipe it back, the Spinosaurus would just be able to turn and protect the people using its sail from the other side. I think that would be a better way to use Spinosaurus as a combat dinosaur. But like as a scout, I don't know. I think it's a bit too big to be a scout. Maybe during like normal days, I suppose. For like average I guess the Spinosaurus could be like your average mailman. But like in an active combat scenario, I can't imagine using Spinosaurus.
Motif, and I agree. In extinction, Spinosaurus is heavily associated with Sobek and is seen as a symbol of the kingdom. Arboreal animals like Microraptor would also prove to be highly useful. Their climbing, gliding, and limited flight capabilities allow them to sneak past enemy lines in forested areas, so they can deliver notes or other messages without being noticed. In dynastic China, I'd expect to see a unique brand of falconry emerge where those skilled in training Microraptors would be given imperial resources to continue their valuable work. Obviously, falcons themselves would be objectively better, given their much faster and higher flight, but remember the point of the video. The mount section of the video is probably the reason you clicked on it.
Well, falcons, right. So I'm assuming, right? Yeah, because falcons can fly, Minecraft doesn't. You know what, guys? Though, you know what something does fly? That was prehistoric. Yeah, pterosaurs. Why don't you just use pterosaurs? Why Microraptor? Microraptor, like it had very limited flight, as you said. So the only way you'd be able to move messengers across faraway lands is if it was in a forested area. The Minecrafter cannot pass through large bodies of water or like large points of like a grass, I suppose, like grasslands. Like I guess it could be used as a mountain scout in messengers for in between mountains. But like using Microraptor as a scout, I don't know. Like, why don't they just use pterosaurs? I guess they said which dinosaurs, I suppose, right?
Without being noticed. In dynastic China, I'd expect to see a unique brand of falconry emerge where those
I feel like it would just be really inefficient to use Microraptor. I could imagine like fantasy royalty using Microraptors as like exquisite pets, as like a falconry kind of stuff, but not in the terms of sending messengers but more like a pastime for the rich people.
Resources to continue their valuable work. Obviously, falcons themselves would be objectively better, given their much faster and higher flight, but remember the point of the video. The mount section of the video is probably the reason you clicked on it, and I don't blame you. The idea of ancient warriors riding ancient animals into battle is incredibly cool. One highlight of using dinosaurian mounts is getting access to giant, fast carnivores. Chenjosaurus in China, and eventually Mongolia, would revolutionize warfare in Asia, as I briefly hinted at in a previous video. This small tyrannosaur was part of the Alioramans, a group of sleek, wicked fast predators with long snouts. Chenjosaurus weighed over...
Oh wait, Kentosaurus was an Alioramid? I don't know why I never made the connection.
Extended periods of time. Despite its small size for its group, it still could bite a human in half and easily carry a rider. Tyrannosaurs had high agility, excellent senses, and keen binocular vision, making them perfect mounts for navigating combat at high speeds, and were likely among the more intelligent and social theropods. Genghis Khan fielding Chenjosaurus.
To be fair, using Kentosaurus is very smart. If it was social. Like, if what they're saying is true, with the nocturnal vision, and the high social ability,
speeds, and were likely among the more intelligent and so
using a small, like, instead of a T-Rex, it is pretty smart. Instead of using like a big animal like a T-Rex, going for a more medium-sized like dinosaur that lived in packs is a lot smarter idea. I will give credit.
They may best be utilized in tandem with horses rather than as replacement, with the Chenjosaurus shock line sprinting in front and dealing heavy damage, while the more agile archer horses wheel in from the sides and lay down constant support fire. There is, of course, the issue of food. Part of the reason why Genghis Khan's mobile armies were so devastatingly successful was the fact that his steppe horses were small and able to eat the grasslands they traveled on day by day. Chenjosaurus cavalry would require large quantities of meat every day, something that would normally be saved for the soldiers. One way to solve this would be to devour the bodies of enemy soldiers, incentivizing further aggression and raids in order to procure more food. This would create a vicious positive feedback loop, just as treasure did for Mongolia's economy during Genghis Khan's rule.
I don't know if that's a good thing, I'm gonna be honest. Entirely relying on the animals, like training the animals to be more aggressive, just so that they can fill their bellies. I can't imagine that being a good strategy. To be fair, I've never done actual warfare. But hey, I mean, I play Warhammer, right? The way I usually do is that I send out my small raptors and stuff first to lure them into forests and like larger areas where the big slow dinosaurs go and finish them off. Like, I want to save as much resources as possible when fighting. I mean, sure, it could create a positive feedback where the animals that are aggressive also get to eat more, so they become even more aggressive. But doesn't that also mean that animals that won't be able to eat more also won't be able to fight more later and creating a negative feedback? Like, I don't know. Like, relying an entire strategy on simply being more aggressive? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, sometimes being aggressive pays off, but like, I can't imagine that just being always good.
During Genghis Khan's rule, forcing more and more raids just to sustain the massive empire he created. Tarbosaurus also exists, and would no doubt be a devastating animal on the battlefield. A 4 to 5 ton animal that can...
Can't believe they didn't mention the best use for animals in warfare. Catapulting a rotting animal into a castle. So, chat, what dinosaur would you prefer to ride into war? I would probably go for, like, something like an iguanodontid, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it's always, usually prey animals... at least those that are migratory tend to have more stamina and resilience than predators, which are usually built for more quick bursts of speed. I think. I mean, heck, that's why humans are such interesting animals, right? Like, you know how humans are more resilient than other animals. Like, I know it might not actually be factually correct, but like, you know the meme where the horses is like a horse versus human meme. Right? Slow monkeys with sticks starting chasing you. You can easily run away, but they never stop chasing you. Right? Like, it's not exactly true, but I would assume, yeah, I would assume herbivores would be a lot more resilient, I suppose. And especially, like, in long-term warfare, I would assume that using carnivores would be herbivores is a lot better than carnivores, right? Like, because there's like a reason a lot of people, even in the old days, we never really used like carnivores for warfare. Like, we never saw a guy riding on a lion into a war, right? Like, there's a reason most people use herbivores instead of carnivores.
Is not a threat to take lightly. Perhaps Tarbosaurus would become a symbol of leadership and royalty, given the difficulty of feeding large populations of megatheropods in the relatively sparse Mongolian desert. A small group could be kept and bred for trainability for generals and khans to use, solidifying both their national identity and overwhelming power on the battlefield. I do still plan on making a Mongolia-specific video for dinosaur warfare at some point, further art commissions pending. Let me know if you're interested in deep dive videos on other civilizations as well. Carcharodontosaurus saharicus in Carthage or Egypt would be used as a weapon of terror. This 7 to 8 plus ton theropod takes the devastating power
so I guess
to the next level, and single-handedly
using Carcharodontosaurus? Okay, I don't know. I feel like he's going over the carnivores first, but I can't help but wonder. I don't know if carnivores would be the best. Like, rule of cool, obviously, but
given that it's
like,
over 3.5
there's no way. Like,
would be given long spears, javelins, or bows in order to better leverage their
unless the carnivore was like a very specific one.
Battering ram to demolish infantry. Fitting bronze spikes to its snout makes that tactic all the more effective while protecting it from enemy ranged weapons.
Like, what I'm saying is that it was like a very specifically like a built animal. Like those carnivores, which are, I guess, more like sturdier built than most actual theropods, right? Like, I can't imagine people using like large theropods over like hadrosaurs.
Military carts to eat enemy bodies to reduce campaign costs. Even with that to soften the economic blow, they'd still only be used as an elite force with relatively small numbers, and that logic would apply to any megatheropod species. In order to keep up peacetime maintenance, these societies would need to breed huge amounts of livestock to keep their megatheropods fed. Good thing hadrosaurs had huge nests, right? I imagine that kingdom's megatheropod shock troops would very much depend on their agricultural production. You need lots of plants to feed hadrosaur herds, and you need lots of hadrosaurs to feed megatheropods. This would incentivize both intense...
Yeah. Really makes you wonder why they don't use hadrosaurs to ride into battle, right? You were so close, buddy! Oh yeah, so guys, right, okay, no, I'm not shitting on them, I'm just more making a joke here, but, yeah guys, we can, we can feed large carnivores with our large herds of herbivores. Guys, what a smart idea! I don't know why we just just use the herbivores instead.
As well as aggressive expansion and looting, which would increase outgoing raids in nearly every civilization that had access to big theropods. We can't leave ceratopsians out of the mount category. These North American and Asian horned giants would be perfect mounts for spearmen and javelin throwers, providing built-
That is true, actually. Ceratopsians would actually, I don't know. Actually, I might, given the circumstances, right? I actually think that Ceratopsians might actually be better than iguanodontids. That's true. Unless it's like in a very open field where speed is an important factor. I can imagine Ceratopsians actually being better than Hadrosaurs in terms of like fighting in wooded areas or swamp areas or areas where like movement is more restricted. I think. That's a pretty smart idea. I will say, I mean, it's literally got a shield on his head.
Easily overpower less equipped rivals in close combat, as well as better use ranged weapons from a mobile defensive platform. The Ceratopsians being herbivores would be perfect as well in the environment of the Great Plains, assuming they'd be fine with eating grass. Sinoceratops would have a huge military impact in China. This 4+ ton Centrosaurian hails from the Shandong province and combines the strength and offensive power of a large rhino with a bony defense only Ceratopsians.
Yeah, I can imagine some people using Ceratopsians.
Powerful with horses, to the point where reports
I didn't even think about Ceratopsians.
He and his horse had armor so durable that they were able to survive cutting through the middle of a light cavalry army multiple times, back and forth, while being shot with so many arrows they reportedly resembled a porcupine. Add in the horns of a big Ceratopsian, and it's time to go bowling for infantry. The Tang Dynasty's jet black armor cavalry was a legendary heavy cavalry unit that would only get upgraded with the addition of dinosaurs. In this scenario, the jet blacks include a mixture of Sinoceratops and Zhusheng Tyrannus heavy armored cavalry that uses a hammer and anvil technique between the herbivores and predators to smash enemy armies to pieces, with the Tyrannosaurs feasting on the remnants of their opponents. Their thick lamellar armor protects them from ranged weapons and allows them to get up close and personal, all the better to leverage their horns, size, and devastating jaws to enforce order in the Empire.
Yeah, carnivores, I can imagine using large theropods for war elephants, because I don't think sauropods would make good war animals, because they're just way too big, they eat too much, they're too big of a target, they're too slow. So animals that are slightly smaller than him, but still need the terror value, I guess you could use large theropods in place for that.
What about everyone's favorite Dino Fantasy trope, Raptor Cavalry? Now, in my book series Extinction, the Mexica warrior Kamashli is a member of the House of the Raptor, an Aztec group of Utah Raptor cavalry. They brought Utah Raptors...
I don't think people will be able to ride Utah Raptors. Can people ride on ostriches?
And hundreds of years of selective breeding have caused the Aztec raptors to become even larger. They're sturdy and fast.
Oh yeah, that's true. I like the idea. I like where he's coming from on breeding dinosaurs selectively to make them larger. That is a very smart idea I didn't even consider. True. If you would domesticate an animal, you would probably breed it to be stronger and faster and bigger. True. I mean, we do that in Ark all the time.
They're sturdy and fast. They also have the advantage of psychic bonds with their riders and human-level intelligence, which is kind of cheating. In a more realistic setting, without the added magic that Extinction has access to, large dromaeosaurids would still be good choices for cavalry. Utah Raptor was a big animal, the size of a typical saddle horse, and had vicious claws and teeth to support its rider in battle. Its calorie demands were far lower.
The thing is that large carnivores can afford to eat, not spend every walking second eating, because meat is much more calorie dense. But larger herbivores will need more time to eat, therefore less war. That's true. What I was also saying is that, one of the reasons that I forgot to mention with the Ceratopsian part is that Ceratopsians actually might be good because they're omnivores. Like, judging from our modern science standpoint, they were likely more like giant hogs than actual, like antelopes, where they would forage probably like everything they could get their hands on. Is what I think what more people happen, believing nowadays. Instead of, being predominantly like herbivores, it would be like omnivores.
Rider in battle. Its calorie demands were far lower than the larger, faster, and more powerful Tyrannosaurs, making it a more practical steed. Given how Utah Raptor is also known from a megablock that contained multiple juveniles and adults that were found with the remains of iguanodontids, group behavior to some extent seems probable. This instinct would allow them to be somewhat trainable and more pliable for humans to use them as pack hunting animals. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Tyrannosaurus rex? While the most physically powerful theropod in terms of raw combat, thanks to its combination of strong senses, jaws, intelligence, agility, size, and potential sociality, it may be less practical than many of the other mount classes we've covered. Its demand for meat would have been insane. That being said, if anyone did manage to start up a taming and breeding program and had the food on hand to keep their lizard king troops healthy, they'd become a serious military power out of nowhere. Speaking of packs, history is filled with examples of humans using groups of loose or wild animals.
I do like how they, I do like how they keep, like, where they have a line where they, like, I love how they say that the T-Rex isn't efficient, right? They do mention that, okay.
Be incendiary pigs at the Siege of Megara, or living bomb monkeys in the Southern Song Dynasty, sometimes simply scaring groups of animals and letting them free is enough to turn the tide of battle. That principle would absolutely hold true for spooking hadrosaur herds to trample enemies. Edmontosaurus, for example, is known to have traveled in groups of hundreds or even thousands of individuals, and average adults were about 5 metric tons. Native American groups with access to Hell Creek megafauna would be capable of using fire and coordinated herding to drive this natural disaster into enemy war parties, squashing them flat. The same idea would go for sauropods, ceratopsians, or any other large animal that may have traveled in big groups. Similarly, training groups of fast, agile theropods like medium or small tyrannosaurs to harry enemy flanks could pay off in a big way. Tyrannosaurs appear to have been among the most intelligent non-avian dinosaurs, with evidence for group behavior, and simply training them to target specific enemies based on their flags or scent would be a great form of psychological warfare. You wouldn't need to risk your own men, just direct the nightmares and let your enemies lose valuable sleep over the idea of tyrannosaur attacks at night. I'll also throw beasts of burden into this category. As pointed out in the comments, iguanodontids and other larger mythopods would be great for supporting large bags of supplies and weapons, and would be able to defend themselves in a pinch. A very convincing argument could also be made for ceratopsians. They're naturally defended from the front and have powerful squat postures that would allow them to carry.
Yeah, I think ceratopsians and iguanodontids are probably the best.
Sauropods would be able
Ankylosaurs, not so much. Mainly because they're too flat, I guess. Where would you ride this guy? I can't imagine saddling that guy up.
But may present too easy of a target unless you go to the extra expense of covering your pack beasts with enough armor for an entire regiment. They do have other uses though, which brings us to our next category. Sauropod howdas and ballistae are an idea I somewhat touched on in the Spec Evo section of Alamosaurus in the Cenozoic, where a carnivorous descendant was weaponized by the war.
What?
War elephants.
The carnivores, we have carnivorous sauropods. Ampelorex mentioned, I guess.
Ballistae are an idea I somewhat touched on in the Spec Evo section of Alamosaurus in the Cenozoic, where a carnivorous descendant was weaponized by the warlord Ashoka the Great. War elephants from India to Rome had platforms built for their backs, where archers and riders would control their movements and fire upon the enemy. Sauropods could be used similarly, like war elephants on a metric ton of steroids, and could hold much larger weapons. Huge ballistae could be used, similar to Warhammer Fantasy Stegodon, or you could have multiple archers with hand-drawn bows using their height to snipe important strategic targets. The sheer physical power of the
Yeah, I mean, why don't they just use ceratopsians for this? Why did it have to be sauropods?
Sauropods themselves cannot be underestimated strategically. If a single 5-ton bull bush elephant is a devastating force, imagine a 60-ton Batagatitan or 90-ton Argentinosaurus. You'd need to make sure their bellies and necks were adequately protected, but once that's taken care of, you'd be able to sweep aside enemy infantry as easily as stepping on blades of grass. Now, there are some disadvantages that carry over from war elephants. Even as intelligent as elephants are, they aren't truly trainable like horses, and can be turned against their own army if enough loud noises, flames, or attacks are aimed in their direction. Sauropods in war represent a high-risk, high-reward troop type. If you can keep control of them, they'd be able to stomp enemy infantry and most cavalry into oblivion, while also providing a place for your ranged.
Larger, but like, what's the benefit of being a larger? Like, with elephants, I do suppose they're like significantly bigger than a human. But sauropods? I don't know. I feel like sauropods versus like other large carnivores, like the extra height advantage that you get from the back of a sauropod versus the amount of resources you have to use to get one, keep one fed, I feel like just sounds really, really inefficient.
Support to stay protected. But if an armored Giraffatitan loses control and rampages among your own ranks, you may have just lost the battle to your own living superweapon. The sheer expense of crafting armor for the necks and underbelly of such enormous creatures is also not to be waved away, meaning that fully equipped sauropod annihilation teams would be very rare. But when they do show up, oh boy. Ankylosaur and Nodosaur mounted ballistae might be more common. These animals have very wide torsos, a squat posture, and ridiculously high natural defense, reducing the need for expensive armor. Mounting ballistae on their backs, particularly on large individuals, would be much easier, and would also permit a line of fire closer to the ground. While the very largest Ankylosaur specimens are just shy of 5 tons, comparable to elephants, current research coming out of Maryland indicates that much larger Nodosaurs may have existed in Cretaceous.
Oh yeah, there's have you guys heard about that mystery Nodosaur that's like 10 meters long?
Still multiple ton animals.
Insane.
Crossbows on their backs. They combine ranged artillery with a close quarters threat that nobody without serious backup is going to dare take on. So yeah, those are...
I'm gonna be honest though, instead of having artillery on their backs, you know what would be an insane method of using them in combat? I would actually just give him more spikes. Like, get this guy a shit ton of metal spikes, just make it a giant metal spiked a pinball, and just have him charge towards the enemy. What are they gonna do on it? Like, to it? Like, step on it? What's it gonna do when it has, like, huge metal spikes for pounding on his back, right? I feel like that would be a lot better use of an Ankylosaur / Nodosaur for combat. Yeah, not as a tank. Like, more like a giant bowling ball of spikes that you hurl towards the enemy. I feel like that would be a kind of a better use. Okay, hold on. Let me just draw something up, right? What I'm saying is that you would give him like armor on his back, like this, and just make it like really, really freaking spiky. And I guess you could maybe have a hole inside here, make a guy sit, I guess, to maybe help steer the animal. Well, you could even like blind the animal, kind of like what we do with horses, and just have that guy on the back control the animal. So you would just basically charge like a blinded spiky Ankylosaur or Nodosaur with a shit ton of spikes towards the enemy. Not flat enough. Yeah, I guess you could, like, I guess this could be one way. Another way would be just to have, without a guy, just get the Dinosaur more spikes, I guess. But if you wanted to have a guy sit on it, I guess this is something you could do. I mean, if you think about it, right? A ballista could penetrate that kind of Nodosaur armor. Like, what would a ballista not penetrate? What I'm saying is that they would use the Nodosaur for spikes and more close battles instead of, like, open fields. Obviously, we aren't gonna send them out in a line of fire, right? You'd probably just send them out in a close corner where they're trying to fight on head. Like, I can't imagine, like, a T-Rex or Tarbosaurus. Yeah, sure, they might have a strong bite force, but how would they be able to, like, pierce, like, fight, like, an armored thing like this? Because the T-Rexes, sure, their bite force might be powerful, but beetles are very wide, so the T-Rex actually couldn't bite, like, it couldn't get a grip on the bite. From what I've heard, at least. That's not how war works. Yeah, that's not how war animals work, Destroyer. If, like, there's gonna be a line where we, decide, right? Yes, sure, ballistas are powerful. That's why we don't use animals to begin with. This is a hypothetical where we end up using animals, right? Elephants stopped being used in World War I for warfare, only being used for manual labor until World War II. Yes, I guess. The more the firing technology develops, I'm gonna assume that, like, armored dinosaurs like these would fall out of fashion. But still, thank you, Vividen, for making this video. It was a very insightful moment. I enjoyed thinking about this.